eagerly engage in the democratic processes. So this is actually part of the wider Women and Youth in Democratic Civic Space engagement, supported by the Kofi Annan Foundation, the European Partnership for Democracy, Westminster Foundation for Democracy, and the Oslo Center, with the support of the European Union. So just to start off our discussions and just to ensure that we have everyone on board, we are going to hear from Judy Achieng. Judy Achieng actually works with Siasa Place as a program officer, but leads the gender unit within Siasa Place. And she's going to share a bit of insights on how Siasa Place has been working to address early warning signs of gender-targeted violence to women, especially in the context of Kenya, because currently Siasa Place is operating in Kenya, but with influence internationally. So Judy, please, may you come through.
Thank you so much, Petrida. It's really good to be here, especially because we're discussing a topic that I'm very passionate about. Just to introduce myself again, because I enjoy saying my name. My name is Judy Achieng. As I have been introduced, I work for a Kenyan organization called Siasa Place. And because we have Tanzanians in the house, you know, in Swahili, Siasa is a place of politics. So I'll just go straight into the agenda of the day, and that is just to give my overview addressing the early warning signs of targeted gender violence to women, especially women in politics and women in public life. It is an honor to speak to you today about this issue that deeply affects our communities and our society as a whole. The gender-targeted violence is not just, it's in as much as in the African setting, people take it as a only women issue. It is a societal issue. So recognizing and addressing the early warning signs can save a lot of lives and promote a more inclusive society. I have had the privilege of working with Siasa Place, as mentioned, and this is an organization that is dedicated to empowering young people and young women in Kenya. So through my work at Siasa Place, I have witnessed firsthand the profound impact that targeted interventions can have in combating gender-based violence. Today, I would like to share some of the critical lessons that I have learned from our interventions here in Kenya. And for the key actors in the space, you know that it's very important for us to understand what gender-targeted violence is. And according to my definition over time, with the work that I've done, with the researches that we have conducted as Siasa Place, I think the most basic, the most understood, the most simple definition is that it encompasses a range of harmful behaviors that are directed at individuals based on their gender. And this kind of violence manifests in various forms that may include physical, emotional, and psychological abuse. So this issue, it's very pervasive, and it affects not just the victims, but also their families and communities, and naturally the way someone behaves. We've seen a lot of self-censorship from a lot of young women, from a lot of women, from a lot of people, just because of targeted violence, especially online. And it's important to recognize the behavioral indicators. That's what I'm talking about, the self-censoring. So that's the changes in behavior. And also we have a lot of environmental factors, which include political instability. It includes discriminatory laws and also societal norms that perpetuate violence, especially for those of us who are in Africa. And of course, the technological red flags, which is one of the reasons why we are here today. So we've seen the rise in online harassment and abuse is targeting women, and the trends usually seem to really come out just before elections, during elections, and even during the time of the public appointments, where the president is usually, or the leader is usually trying to dish out certain seats. That's when we see the rise in online harassment. So in my work, I actively advocate for policies that protect women and promote gender equality. So despite the stipulation, now this is in the Kenyan constitution, despite the stipulation in the constitution under Article 27 and 81 for gender quotas, women who are active in politics or female political aspirants, and generally women in public life, and even women, just the normal women who are not either in politics or public life, they continue to face significant challenges due to the lack of implementation of these quotas. So the absence of female voices at the national level sort of trickles down to the county and grassroots levels, which is further marginalizing women. And through our work, of course, at Siasa Place, we have learned that it's important to understand the local context and societal context so that it's easy for you to design the effective interventions, and also involving communities and relevant stakeholders so that it's easy for you to follow up, because ongoing support and follow-up is crucial to ensure that you have long-term success for the interventions. And then policy recommendations are also something that you are really pushing for implementation of specific policy changes to better protect women and address early signs of violence, such as code of conduct and policies that speak to gender responsive norms in political parties, in workspaces, in places of engagement for young women. We also push for a lot of education and awareness, because we understand that information is very critical in changing certain narratives in our communities. But then again, utilizing technology to report and monitor signs of violence is also, it's really important. That's where we have a lot of accountability with the civic techs, not the civic techs, what are they called? The big tech companies. It's always good to put them to account, because that's the avenue where all the online harassment takes place. And please allow me to share a few success stories from our interventions at Siasa Place. And I think with the work that all of us do, inspiring examples, the storytelling for change is really important. So we've gotten a lot of feedback on early detection of emotional abuse that led to timely intervention. I also recall one story of a young woman who, through one of our sessions, gained the courage to speak out against her abuser, and this led to a community-wide movement against the domestic violence that she was going through. So the thing with violence, it sort of escalates from the online to the physical, or physical to the online. So it's a two-way traffic. So that is why this is something that we really need to speak about. And even as we are here today on this wonderful webinar, it's important to acknowledge Tanzania, because you've made so much strides. I mean, with a female president at the helm, you're a beacon of hope and a powerful reminder that women can lead nations towards progress and equality. Your leadership sets a precedent for the rest of Africa and the world, and it's really something for other countries to look at and not be confined in our usual norms and cultural barriers. And I really want to talk because this is something that is really close to my heart, but I would like to close it at some of the things that we can do even as people who are outside and those who are inside. I mean, it's really important for us to speak out. I mean, if you see something, you say something. Don't just be a silent bystander. Then it's also important to advocate for the implementation of gender quotas and support female political aspirants in your community. And any woman who's trying to sort of occupy a certain space, it's for you to sort of give them a helping hand and always encourage them. And then it's also good for us to share what we've learned with our families, with our friends and colleagues, because we know that awareness is the first step to change. And without talking more, I would like to say thank you so much to Petrida. I'm really grateful for the opportunity to speak on this day. I mean, I'm the first speaker, so that is really something. Thank you so much to the Imara Leadership Center, and really looking forward to learning more from the rest of our speakers. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Judy. And I think that was a very well eloquent, elaborated submission. I must agree, we are currently a role model country example for many countries, given that we have a woman leadership at the helm of our nation. But also it was really good to actually learn on the different interventions that Siasa Place has been doing, and maybe find synergies later on as we move along in the discussion. And I could tell that currently in Kenya, it's a very tense environment, but it's good that your team has shown leadership through it, and I think it's through this role model examples that we can learn on how best to address hate speech to women without looking very controversial or without looking very aggressive, as they often put it. I'll come back to you a bit later, Judy. And right now, I'll just directly move on to Dr. Victoria. Dr. Victoria is currently a leader in Tanzania. Actually, she's an academician and a researcher. She works on several programs related to human good governance promotion, but also human rights and gender equality. And I think Dr. Victoria has been also a lecturer at some point, and I still think she is still a lecturer and has educated in different forums. She brings on a wealth of experience in her different avenues as a woman leader per se, and well recognized in Tanzania. So just on to that, I think I'll welcome her to actually share with us the different areas on how best we can identify the gender sensitive indicators of electoral violence, and looking at how this affects women leaders in Tanzania, but also she can bring in on her perspective of different nations that she has also worked with. So over to you, Dr. Victoria.
Thank you very much, Petrida. I hope you can hear me okay. Please confirm.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I would like to take this opportunity to thank you all for inviting me to this webinar, discussing a very critical topic about violence against women in politics and in elections. My name is Dr. Victoria Lihiru. I am a senior lecturer at the Open University of Tanzania. I'm also a researcher and a consultant on issues pertaining to democratic governance, particularly the run of free and fair elections, women's political participation, rule of law, human rights, and social inclusion. I have got an opportunity to work with a number of grassroots, national, regional, and international organizations, particularly on the area of women's political participation. So my area of specialization is on legal aspects of women's political participation and legal aspects of elections. So I'm a lawyer by training. I also would like to thank the previous speaker for, setting the ground running and for sharing critical reflections from Kenya. And actually, I share her sentiments about the fact that Tanzania now it's unprecedented, particularly with the fact that we don't only have a female president, but we also have a female speaker. So that says that, two of our, arms of the state are led by women, the parliament or the legislature and the executive. And perhaps we can get, a female chief justice soon. We've never had a female chief justice. And actually with the female president at the helm, who also served as our very first female vice president for about 6 years before, our president, President Magufuli died. And then the vice president, the female vice president ascended to power as a president. So that has actually come up with a number of other advantages particularly more appointments of women in the cabinet. We are seeing change of laws, and because we're talking about gender-based violence, we have also seen positive legislation around violence against women in politics and elections, which I will share later. I just wanted to share a bit of statistics in terms of violence against women in elections and politics. But maybe before I do that, it's critical to give a sort of a historical background on what we are speaking about today. Violence against women in politics. So this is actually a new phenomenon, and as researchers, we're continuing to research and find more evidence about. So as a concept, violence against women in politics, it has just evolved from a number of countries, and until now we have a name as violence against women in politics, or some would say violence against women in elections. But I think, paying more attention on violence that happens for women during their participation in elections, I think we can trace it back from Bolivia, where they were talking about issues of harassment that happens against on women during elections. We also have some evidence from Southern Asia, but also from Kenya, where people are just talking about the oppression, the marginalization, the harassment women tend to face when they participate in elections. So, in as much as elections in their very nature contentious, and in most countries, particularly those countries that apply just past the post as the electoral system, there's great contestation and violence is involved in the handling of the elections. But again, I just wanted to put it in a bigger picture, where when we talk about violence in elections, before even specifically focusing on violence against women in elections, electoral violence is just one of the signs of lack of electoral integrity, or it's a sign of free and it's sort of a sign of absence of free and fair elections. So it also signals that actually the country, or rather the continent, or as the world at large, we've not been tolerant enough of each other's opinion. So whenever a person presents different opinion from the other, different political opinion from the other, he or she may be faced with an attack from the opponent. So if it's a person from the ruling party, he or she can get backlash from the opposition, and vice versa. But again, when somebody faces oppression or marginalization or harassment or any act of violence as a result of gender, as a result of being a woman, that's what we call violence against women in elections, or violence against women in politics. And this is actually a retaliation of our community, because historically we've not experienced having women as our leaders. So women's spaces actually deemed to be in private spheres, in domestic spheres. And therefore, when women try to come out and try to, take part in elections, participate in political processes, it is seen as if they are trying to encroach, the place that is not traditionally theirs. So that's why there's backlash from family members, backlash from members of the political parties that the woman is from, or backlash from followers, or backlash from online, and so forth and so on. So it's just whenever you see any act of violence targeting women, you will have to understand that it's just a reaction from the community, due to the fact that they are not used to seeing women in positions of power. So it's sort of, a way of telling women, go back to where you belong, go back to the kitchen, go back to the domestic spheres, go back to the private spheres. So that's why we're saying it's a new area where we're continuing to research. But again, for instance, in Tanzania, we've had elections since independence. But when we talk about multi-party elections, we know that after independence, I think the time before independence, we were a multi-party country. But then after independence, we sort of shifted to a single party. And it was until 1995 where we held our first multi-party elections. So 1995, and we hold elections after every 5 years. So 1995, there was no attention was paid on violence against women. By the way, there were very few women. I believe there were acts of violence against the women who came out to participate in the first multi-party elections. But election observers did not really pay attention. It was not documented. Likewise for the 2000 elections, again 2005, 2010. If you read the reports from the National Electoral Commission, where they talk about how the events unfolded during elections, you really don't see any attention being paid to how women participated and how they fared navigating actions or acts of violence towards them. But we have our first report which talks about violence against women in politics. This was produced after the 2015 general elections. It was produced by an organization called Tanzania Women Cross-Party Platform. So there is a 2015 study on violence against women in elections in Tanzania. And the manifestation of violence against women in elections, it is the same as how other forms of gender-based violence happens. So we talk about physical violence, where you'll find, for instance, a female candidate being attacked, assaulted, being beaten. If you followed the incidences in the 2020 general elections, you would appreciate the fact that naturally you'll be concerned about the fact that most of women, particularly those from opposition, they faced quite a bit of physical violence. They were manhandled, they were beaten, their clothes were taken off. It was quite an illustration of how violence, particularly physical violence, against women in politics could really manifest. And also, you also have sexual violence, which is quite a problem, particularly in political parties, and particularly during the nomination of candidates. For instance, in Tanzania, it's a country that the only way to participate in elections is through a political party. We don't allow, or the country has not allowed independent candidates. So whoever wants to vie, let's say we have the 2024 local elections and we have the 2025 general elections. If you, my dear Petrida, you want to vie, you will have to find yourself a political party, become a member, convince them that we can make a good candidate. And through doing that, you can be subjected to sexual corruption. People will demand sexual favors for them to maybe vote you in during nominations, allow you to vie, allow you to be nominated, and so forth and so on. But again, there psychological violence. There's high escalation of online violence. There are also other forms of violence that happens. Economic violence would also happen during elections targeting women. So this 2015 study on gender-based violence or violence against women in elections, it shows that 69% of women electoral candidates, they reported having experienced the abuse of language. So that's an indicator. If you could see, if you have maybe a female aspirant for elections, or if you have a female candidate, if you see people throwing words into her, calling those common names, they will call you a prostitute, they will call you a feminist, they will call you are anti-men, they will call you all sorts of names. All your dirty laundry will come up to the fore. So abusive language is one of the most common form of violence against women in Poland, and that's how it manifests. If you're following even the trends in the US now, it's just in the primaries, but you would already see sentiments and verbal abuse against or towards Kamala. So that also happens in our elections. So 69% of the electoral candidates, they reported that in 2015, they faced some form of abusive language. And this is not, if I was making a presentation here, I could actually show you that, for instance, in Imara region, we had a campaign manager calling upon people not to vote for a female candidate because she's just a prostitute. You know, in Rukwa region, we had also, you know, a candidate, a male candidate who was vying with a female candidate, and he was telling, you know, the followers, the voters, the electorate, not to vote for the woman because when she's in her period, she won't be able to represent them well. So these are just some of them. Of the examples of musical language. We even had, you know, the late President Magufuli, when he was in Temeke in one of his campaign for presidency, you know, when they go for campaign, they also campaign for the members of parliament who are coming from that particular area. So when he reached there, and the system candidate was a female, and she had light skin, you know, perhaps a little bit more, your skin is a little bit dark, but I think it's lighter than mine. But the candidate from Temeke had a lighter skin. And the late president was like, so you have to vote her in. Because, you know, she has this light skin. When she comes to me, I'm likely to listen to her compared to dark-skinned women. I was like, so the moment I vie for a seat, this skin tone is really going to bring me problems. So that's an example of an abusive language as it can happen in elections. But we also have another statistics which say that actually 17% of electoral candidates, female electoral candidates in the 2015 elections experienced physical attacks. And that also actually happened even during the 2020 elections. And we have 13% reporting that they were asked for sexual favors. So this is a statistics that happened, and they are documented. And also we documented actions or acts of violence against women in elections during the 2020 elections. That report is there. But fast forward, you know, this is how it manifests. And I would like to say that when it comes to women candidates, they face electoral violence. They face, you know, violence against women in political elections in a number of ways. For instance, you know, a woman before she decides to run as a candidate, she self-sabotages herself. She can say, perhaps I'm not that intelligent, or I'm not that educated, or my confidence is very minimum, or I do not have good public speaking skills. So she's self, you know, violating her own rights. Although we have the Constitution and the Elections Act, all guaranteeing the rights of guaranteeing all human beings, including women, the rights to not only vote but also participate in vying. But you know, violence against women in policy, I could say sometimes it starts at a personal level where women demean themselves. They, you know, they sort of turn down their own lights. But again, whenever they are able to overcome the self-sabotage stage, then they have to go via a political party, you know, unlike Kenya, where they are independent candidates. And I think in the last election, the last election in Kenya, actually, a young girl won elections through, you know, a private candidate seat. But in Tanzania, as I said, we do not have independent candidates. So after a woman has really self-talked and, you know, encourages herself and gave herself courage that she can do it, then she has to navigate the family level dynamics. If she's married, she would want to get permission from the husband. So if she's not, she would like to get permission from a father or an uncle, any father figure. And these ones also, they can perpetuate actions of violence toward this woman. They will tell her, maybe you are not capable enough. Do you even hear how you sound? Are you really able? You're going to, you know, to drag our name into the mud. So that's another level of violence against women in politics at the political party, at the family level. And even when As you know, most of the women do not have the financial muscles, or even if they have financial muscles, sometimes they do not have decision over their finances. It's either their money is in the joint account with the husband, or even if the money is not in the joint account with the husband, they have their own money, but they do not have a say on how to use it, how to get it from the bank. So you find that sometimes the husband will deny this woman from using the family resources to finance her political ambition. So that again is economic violence, which will actually affect how this woman participates. And when the opponents begins to bring all the bad things that this woman has ever done, her past boyfriends, her past sexual relationships, then even the family members would use that to put this woman down, to say, no, we are not going to remain in this limelight. You need to step down. So that's a level of violence against women in politics that happens at family level. And when this woman has, overcome her own self-criticism, she has overcome, the criticism from the family, then she has to navigate the dynamics in the political party. And here it's where you have a lot of name calling. You will have, other opponents actually calling the husband, calling the father. You fail to control your daughter. You fail to control your wife. Why is she, and with campaigns, there are those campaigns coined as suka kwa suka. Bedsit one, comment. These campaigns actually happen during the midnight. So they will be, approaching these husbands and fathers and father figures of these women, telling them, "You're allowing your daughter. She's gallivanting in the night. She's just sleeping around in the night, and now she's sleeping with everybody within the political party for her to be nominated." So that's another manifestation. It's an indicator of violence against women in elections. And then we have to understand that actually the perpetrators of violence against women in elections are not only men. They can be even women. Even women actually bring themselves down, because we are all sons and daughters of patriarchy. So unless we are transformed, it doesn't matter who is a leader of a political party. So sometimes, I always wonder when people always say, "Hey, but we had women in the room, so women issues are represented." No, it's not like that. It doesn't mean that because we are women here, then our issues are represented. If we still have patriarchal mindset, we will be there to guard and water patriarchy, make it flourish. So we need a mental transformation before we say who was capable of representing us well as women. I don't know how many minutes I have, but I think I've spoken, but I need to speak one last point. You can give me an indication of how many minutes I still have before I proceed. Petrida, do you know how much time I still have so that I can measure?
Yes, Doctor. I think you're left with about 1 to 2 minutes, and then we can
Okay.
move on.
Yeah. Thank you. So I wanted to say that after all that I have said, again, after the nominations from the political party, if this woman is nominated, they will have to go to campaigns. They will have now to go into the rallies if they are vying for maybe a street, or they are vying for a hamlet or a village. And that is when I'm talking about the local elections, or if it's general elections, if they are vying at a ward level, or if they are vying at a parliamentary level, they will now need to go down to the respective wards, respective constituency, and seek for the votes and campaign. And there again, you would have a lot of backlash, a lot of acts of violence against these women. Women have shared with us that even when they are returning the nomination forms, let's say to the National Electoral Commission, people would just target them and steal their forms and take their forms forcibly so that they cannot return the forms on time. So that's a form of violence against women in politics. They also shared with us that sometimes they're being followed by male candidates saying, "You step down, we will consider you for special seats." So that's a form of violence against women in politics, because if this woman is competent to run in a constituency, why should she be be fixed to run through special seats. And sometimes money is being taken to these women. If a woman is very competent, she will be bribed to step down. So that's also the manifestation of violence against women. Or sometimes this woman is actually nominated by her political party, by the NEC, but again, she doesn't campaign. Why? She's self-sabotaging the campaign. Why? Because she's already been bought. But we have a light at the end of the tunnel, in that actually we had laws. The bills came out last year, and these bills were pertaining to, the laws concerning political parties, the Elections Act, and there was also a new law to govern the National Electoral Commission. So these bills, when they came out, they came out with good things. First and foremost, they demanded political parties to have gender policies, and also to have gender desks. If you follow the local politics in Tanzania, you would know that we have gender desks that are available in the police stations, in the higher learning institutions. So political parties are now commanded by law to have gender desks. And among the responsibilities of these gender desks is actually to help the mainstreaming of gender issues within the political parties, but also to handle issues pertaining to gender-based violence. So you have a legal requirement that require political parties to set up a gender desk, to ensure they have a gender policy, but again, tasking the gender desk to deal with, among many other roles, mainstreaming of gender issues within the political party, but also handling issues of violence, cases of violence against women in politics. So that's a positive note. And again, something that was not in the bill, but then it got included after the deliberations in the parliament. There's an offense, violence against women in elections is now an offense. It is stipulated as such under Section 135 of the Presidential, Parliamentary, and Councillors Elections Act. So Section 135 stipulates that any act of violence against women in elections is an electoral offense. So that's very critical, because one of the strategies for addressing violence against women in politics, being it online violence, being it physical violence, being it psychological, being it economical, being it sexual, it starts with the law. And then law has to be accompanied with other measures such as, awareness raising, capacity building, ensuring that the victims are getting the help that they need, ensuring that the perpetrators are brought to justice. So Tanzania is becoming one of the few countries to have a specific section that criminalizes violence against women in politics. So that's a positive note. It's something to applaud. But how effective that law would be, we need to wait and see. Wait and see for the 2015-2025 general elections. We will see how it will be applicable. But I think it's worth mentioning that it was the role of the civil society organizations, the role of they were champions, parliamentarians, so members of parliament, some of them really took this issue into heart. They shared their experiences and they really pushed for Tanzania to have a specific section on violence against women in politics. So it's such a milestone and we are celebrating. But again, as I said, its efficacy or effectiveness will have to be measured after the 2025 general elections. I think for now, those reflections are enough, and I'll come back later in case I needed to clarify anything. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Victoria. And I think I really like your sense of humor. We really enjoyed receiving your submission, especially around looking at how best women themselves can be a problem, but also looking at the shaming, the bias, and a lot of racial discrimination that is involved around the whole component of women leaders with association with hate speech. A lot of prejudices and misogyny, but self-doubting. I think I really cement this with you, that self-doubting of women leaders is quite something that has been ongoing and currently is still ongoing, because a lot of women still feel they're not good enough or they don't have enough skills to take up various political roles. But also we really appreciate your technical expertise on this topic, looking at the fact that the submissions were more around the fact-finding, being exact on the matter. And I think we'll definitely want to have you in our upcoming physical session as one of our facilitators in the coming few months. So just to move on to our next segment session, and I'll be handing this over to Brian Chago, my colleague. Brian actually is a research consultant for Imara Leadership Initiative and currently is a doctoral student in political science and public administration. He's joining us from Poland, and he'll be taking us through the next segment, and I'll leave it up to there so as he can actually brief us on what should we expect from our next speakers. Brian, over to you.
Well, thank you so much, Petrida, for guiding us through the first segment of our session. And I'd like to thank the guest speakers, Judy Achiang from Siasa Place and Dr. Victoria Lihiru, for such your extensive insights and clear examples or distinct examples with case studies from both Kenya and Tanzania, respectively. So now I have the pleasure of guiding you through the next segment of our session. And with here, we'll be guiding through some critical questions with our esteemed panelists. So the first panelist will be Mr. Masunza Kingu. And I'm going to shortly explain who Masunza Kingu is. So our first panelist, Masunza Kingu, is a member of International Republic Institute, IRI, Generation Democracy East Africa Unity Alliance, also a member of the Youth Tolerance Committee 2024-2025. He serves as the Executive Director of the Global Bridging Center for Shared Development and holds several leadership roles as a member of the Youth Sounding Board 2024-2026 under the European Union delegation to Tanzania. He has also led a coordinating projects on youth promotion in several leadership places in the United Republic of Tanzania, working with stakeholders internationally and nationally, especially around the work of democracy. So without further ado, I'm going to pose a question to Mr. Masunza. So we see many online hate on the social media and so forth, which is faceless and I would say nameless threats. So in your opinion or in your view, how can men become champions in the fight against this digital menace aimed at women leaders in Tanzania? So welcome, Mr. Kingu, and over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brian and colleagues, and also to the previous speakers. I really liked your sentiments, and also some of the items that you highlighted were really great. So before I start presenting on my part, maybe how many minutes do I have so that I know how to minimize myself?
Yeah, so you have around 5 minutes.
5 minutes. Okay, thank you very much. So first of all, before proceeding to how as men we can address hate speech online, I think it will be eloquent to kind of highlight what is hate speech at the first instance. So hate speech is a form of communication that disparages an individual based on race, can be on gender, but also it can be on sexual orientation and other kind of characteristics that one can pose. But also hate speech also happens at the ignorance and intolerance of the perpetrator, and also at the weakness of the laws, policies, and also our leaders in being accountable in upholding such policies and laws that hinder hate speech around. But also hate speech happens where at the knowledge where most oftenly perpetrators mostly assume that they have such kind of freedom of expression to that extent, but they really forget that you are right to swing your fist actually ends where your nose begins. There's that saying. So even though we have such kind of freedoms of expressing ourselves, but there are limits to such freedoms, and we cannot go beyond such limits. So those are the things that I wanted to bit of highlight before proceeding to my presentation. So moving forward, what's the key role of men in actually addressing hate speech for women leaders in our country? So I'll have 5 key points. The first one is through promoting gender equality and respect among women leaders. And this is through promoting advocacy related works, but also training to our fellow men in the communities. And actually, I can say a bit of a point is also reviving our history, because we mostly forget that in Tanzania, there are communities. For instance, my community, I'm in Nyiramba by tribe. So in Nyiramba tribe, we have a history of having a female chief. So our female chief was known as Chief Lati. So you can even, we are forgetting about embracing such kind of female leaders that existed within our communities. And that also can give away of a sense to male within our communities, thinking that maybe it's only men that have ever been ruling within our communities, or it's only men that have ever had a decision-making authority. But it's actually and likewise, where we have also other tribes that embrace such kind of femininity leadership within their community. And also you can look at Digo. The Digos, they have Chief Mwanaidi of the Digo. Even in Masai, they had Chief Kizito. These are all female chieftains in our history. So also reviving such kind of history and spreading such awareness and education can sometimes offer a certain of behavioral approach or behavior change within our communities and to people who are actually perpetrating such kind of activities. The other is also supporting women leaders. And here, as men, we are supposed to offer support and solidarity. How can we become allies with our female fellow leaders? How can we work together? This is all there in central that. And how can we also defend women leaders when they facing such kind of practices? How can we play such a kind of role, but also become allies? That's the most important part. But also the third point will be policy and regulatory reform. This will be the third point, because the role of having policies, laws, and regulations within our government or national system, it's not only on punishing people who are perpetrating violence or criminal acts, but it's also even to rehabilitate, but also another action that our laws are supposed to foster is also even protect. So if such kind of activities are still happening within our community, that's also, we have to acknowledge there's a weakness within our laws, our policies, but also in implementation of such laws from our leaders who or the executive arms of government or systems that are supposed to implement such laws when they're being made. So how are our leaders playing a key role of actually fostering such kind of environment within our communities, but also standing against our laws and policies, how they're supposed to be addressed and how to be implemented within our communities. That's another issue. So another way of how, as men, we can also promote the hate speech not being targeted among women within our communities. So the first point will be fostering safe spaces. Here is also how can we as men also create a positive, safe environment where female young leaders and also female members of our communities also can flourish within our community. And this is through having, supportive networks of men whereby they speak about these things within our land communities where they can create safe spaces, but also, defend when there's kind of like these perpetration being made, but also not being afraid to to actually address misogyny, because you find that most of these acts are behind them. There's a certain point of misogyny being derived. So addressing such kind of issues can also foster safe spaces for women to flourish within leadership structures and also platforms. The fifth point and my last point will be, addressing barriers and also encouraging participation among women themselves as men. So as men, we are supposed to address some of these barriers that are linked with religion. For instance, in Muslim religion, sometimes a woman leader in a Muslim religion is seen as not fit to wear that role of being a leader just because she's a Muslim. Or you find that in other cultures, I've mentioned that the other tribes that they embrace women leaders, such as Singida, the Digo, they had some of their chiefs who are female. But also there are also some of the cultures that actually they have nothing to do with women leadership, and also they undermine women within their community. So addressing such kind of barriers as men also can help to foster a safe online environment for women to flourish, and also to achieve their ambitions and dreams within democratic processes and leadership. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Kingo, for your insights. I think a number of us have learned from your short presentation. Key takeaways from me regarding your short presentation is what are the important things that men can do to deal with hate speech against women. So you mentioned promoting gender equality, support and offer solidarity amongst women, policy and regulatory reform, and as well as fostering safe spaces for women, and lastly, addressing barriers and encouraging participation amongst women. So our next speaker will be Rahma Munita. So I'm going to briefly introduce Rahma Munita and what she does. So Rahma Munita is an executive director of Open Youth Opportunities, a youth-led organization that operates in the United Republic of Tanzania that works on empowering young people on civic education, capacity building, on good governance, and also she's a political analysis. She previously received a training on youth influencers advocates to end hate speech under the United Nations Human Rights Office of the High Commissioner in Tanzania. She has a media background working as a journalist in a leading media station in Tanzania, Clouds Media Group. And she's also recognized as a Sustainable Development Goal Ambassador in Tanzania. So thank you, Rama. So we're going to move forward with a particular question for you. So, so currently, as the elections approach, as you understand, we have the elections this year, and then for the local government, and then next year we'll have the presidential and parliamentary elections. So, what innovative strategies can we implement to vigilantly monitor and combat violence against women during these crucial times? So, over to you, Rama, and welcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I hope everyone can hear me. My laptop have a problem. I cannot put video, but I guess I'm gonna present my topic through audio. Thank you for being here. Thanks to the previous speakers. After Dr. Victoria spoke, I thought I don't have any more points to add, but I'll add some few things. I think what can be done to monitor violence against women, especially online, one, I can say we need to speak up. Two or a few months ago, we had a regional commissioner of Arusha talking to a woman who is a public servant, and he used hate speech. He was scolding her, and few people stand to speak about that. There was Legal Human Rights Center, they give out a speech on that, countering that, and they point that is online sexual exploitation. It is sexual exploitation for women. But I wish more feminists would have this tendency of speaking up, because there are very few people who pointed that out. Like, even though you're famous and you are RRC, but you don't have the privilege to manipulate women, especially in front of other people, because that woman was in front of an audience. He was in his tours. So we need to speak out as stakeholders, as a society. We need all of us to come together and speak out. When we see like there are other people that are doing exploitation, especially for women, we are working toward making a society be a better place and safe place for everyone. Lakini, there are a few people who are blocking that efforts that we have been doing. So one thing the first thing that I will advocate is we need to speak out against discrimination, exploitation, and women abuse. Another thing that I can say is we need to monitor, collect, and report data, because there are few data, especially on violence that is being conducted to women, especially during elections. You will see men, like Dr. Victoria mentioned and the other previous speakers, there are threats to men politicians. There are threats to men who are voters. Lakini there are more threats to women who are in opposition and who are engaging in elections directly. I was in the media in 2020, and I was reporting during election. I faced online exploitation and abuse. There was physical threats coming towards me. So there are so many violence that women are facing. We agree, like, men face violence during election, but more they are being directed to women. As you can see, women are more voters than men, according to numbers and according to statistics. So we need to make sure that women are safe, especially women in opposition parties, women in oppositions, politics, because politics is a dirty game. But as much as we need good leaders in our communities, as much as we need to practice democracy, we must ensure that we are monitoring any violence that or any threats that are targeted toward women's, whether it's women candidates or women voters or women that are in electoral commissions, bodies, and whatever. But also, we must ensure that we train electoral stakeholders, because some women who are facing violence and exploitation during elections, they try to report, but the stakeholders or the staffs that are in electoral commissions, bodies, they don't have the knowledge to know that this is the violence or this is not. Maybe others think that this is just normal, that this is just the way things are, like, but we need to train them to know, like, when a person reports that I have been abused, that I have been exploited, I have been humiliated, what are the measures to be done? Because sometimes women will be discouraged to report because they see nothing is being done on the reports that are being taken to the respective departments. But another thing that I will say is to raise awareness and educate voters, because public information's campaign and the campaign that are being conducted on the grounds, they have a lot of things, and people do not have that knowledge. I mentioned the knowledge that is supposed to be training to the electoral stakeholders, but we also have the public, who are the majorities, and they don't have that knowledge. Yes, we have amended the law, and now women on the law aspects, we are good, but what's the situation now at the ground? Because here is what the politics is being done. People are going throughout Tanzania, in all districts, in all regions. What are they facing? Now we need to practice democracy, but is the environment safe for the women to go and contest, or they'll be just called Malaya, as Dr. Victoria said. So we need to make sure that the parents also need to see their young women, young girls are being there and contesting. But the environment first should be safe, and the community or the public should be also well equipped to have the knowledge and knowing that you cannot say this to a candidate, even if you don't like him or her, especially for the women, you don't like her, just go and vote for someone that you like, but do not throw hate speech, or do not throw threats, or do not throw anything that is going to harm that woman. And the last thing that I will say is we need also to make sure that we model good behavior. We have that a tendency of praising the men who are the champions of women, especially in the elections, because that will also be something that other men will learn from. And when a man who, like I have mentioned, the RC, that we also have to point fingers out openly without closing our eyes and say this is bad. Because if we keep quiet, we teach to the next person, like, that is okay, you can do that to all other women. But if we speak, we are stopping that behavior to expand to more and more and more people. And if we manage to do that, I think the election will be safe for all women, and young women will come out more to contest in the political positions, but also they will be more interested to join in the politics. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much, Rama Mwita, for your insights. A quick recap of what you've just explained to us is regarding some of the key issues that needs to be done. You spoke of the need of speaking out as a society, as stakeholders, also to monitor and gather enough data regarding electoral violence against women. You also spoke of training the electoral stakeholders, raising awareness amongst the society about the importance of women participating in the democratic processes in Tanzania. So we are now going to our last speaker. So once again, I'd like to thank you so much, Rama Mwita. So we are now going to our last speaker, Ms. Christine Lucas. So Ms. Christine Lucas is a public policy and engagement specialist, and she works at Vodacom Tanzania, one of the leading telecommunication networks in Tanzania. So now turning the spotlight onto you. So Ms. Christian, in an age where digital communications reigns supreme, how can telecommunications companies step up to the plate and effectively address hate speech directed at women leaders? Thank you. So over to you, Christine. Once again, welcome to the session.
Thank you very much, Brian, and I hope you can hear me clearly. You'll have to forgive me. I'm in movement, so I cannot put on my camera, and I might be a bit shaky. My voice might be a bit shaky, but if you cannot hear me, please just prompt me on the way. Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. Brian, please confirm that you can hear me well and I can proceed.
Yes, I can hear you very well.
Awesome, awesome. First of all, I'd like to say thank you very much for involving me in this very insightful webinar. Very insightful speakers. I have learned a lot from the onset of the call. I have been quiet and listening and taking in everything, and of course, contemplating my position or our position as a sector when it comes to improving democracy in the country, particularly in supporting women leaders, women politicians. And if I may say, it's very interesting that we're having this discussion today, because just earlier we had a session with one of the gurus of the country that is Mama Mongela. And something interesting that she said during the meeting is that when our founding father, Nyerere, was struggling for independence, among the three things that he was fighting for was education. And it's the perspective that was interesting. It says that there's no democracy without education, because if you don't educate people, there is where votes will be stolen. There is where people will be lied to. There is where people cannot count how much votes they got, and other people end up stealing these votes. So leadership is shaky. It's not stable when people are not educated. Yeah. And that also brought me back to the discussion that we have on hand. If we do not educate the society on what is at hand right now, then we are at a fail. We are at a loss in democracy, because we are reigning digital age at the moment. But truth be told, many of I would say Tanzanians in this aspect, we do not have the so-called digital skills. We are not ready for this digital era. We were not prepared, and suddenly, all of a sudden, we're here. Globalization is just taking us left, right, and center, and it's like a crash course, right? It's a crash course, and we have to manage and maintain the space while also fighting our own fires inside the country. So education is one of the things that we are to do as a nation: educate people on digital skills, on digital spaces, how to use digital spaces for their own advantages, for equitable political participation, and the like. And of course, it has been said from the beginning, from the very first speaker, we have contextualized what hate speech is to a political leader, to a leader. And I just want to say that women's safety in the online sphere needs to be guaranteed in order to support this democratic progress. Otherwise, we're fighting ourselves. And this is to improve, of course, gender equality in the public life. When we lose the voice of a woman because she fears going into the public spaces, when we lose her voice because she cannot go online to talk about herself, talk about her agenda, then it widens the democratic gap. Again, we're failing. And the internet at the moment, as we know, is increasingly a unique and useful tool for this political engagement. This is why it is now more than ever more important to just ensure women are safe online, so that we can have their voices and their equitable participation in the political process. I was reading a research quite recently by Amnesty International, and it found that in India, an average of 113 hostile or abusive tweets per day were received by women politicians, which equals 1 in every 7 tweets about women politicians. This is a problem, and it's a big problem. If we don't look at it that way, then we are failing. Yeah. So if I can direct now my answer or my thought insight to the question that you just posed, in the digital era, what can we do? What can telecommunications company do in support of women against hate speech? There are a number of things. As I introduced the topic that we had earlier today, and the focus on education, the first thing that telco companies can do to address this issue is to bring about awareness. Awareness. I cannot say that so much. Yeah, we need to come to a place where education on digital spaces is free and accessible for all. We need to come to a place where women know where they can get information and are ready to learn. We need to go into places where women are and really involve them in the understanding of what the digital spaces are, how they can protect themselves, what rules are there in place for them. And the unique feature about telecommunication companies or the digital age is the fact that it reaches many people in a very short span of time. So usually we compare ourselves with the likes of banking industry, and we say the banks can reach the haves, right? And for you to be able to need banking services, you must have, yeah. And then the telcos can reach the have-nots. And in a Tanzanian context, many of our fellow countrymen belong to the have-nots. That's the wider group, yeah. And we have the potential to reach as many people in that group as possible. So in our campaigns, in the campaigns that we do, in the products that we make, really targeting female and female leaders and men in this aspect, to educate, to give digital skills, to give online safety education, for people to know what is it that hate speech does. Kwanzaa, what is hate speech? Because sometimes these people, especially men in online spaces, some of them, they do these things knowingly, and some of them do not know that they are hurting, or they're entering into a different sphere, which is hate speech, right? So first of all is putting out awareness on what hate speech is, what is the danger of hate speech, how it has the potential to affect a woman's emotional, physical, cognitive, and of course lead to this woman's lack of self-confidence, disturbance of self-image, and sometimes to more severe forms of depression, anxiety. And we have seen cases of suicide. I'm sure my fellow speakers from the social, from other industries can reiterate to that. Yeah, so more than that, digital companies or telecommunication companies, they have a role to contribute to gender-sensitive cyber laws with the governments and policymakers. But more than that, we have a unique advantage of pulling more women, sensitizing more women, inspiring and motivating more women, more girls to come into the technology industry, because in that way, their voices are heard, or rather, our voices are more heard, and we are in a position to implement some of these things that we're saying, some of the things that we want to be done. We're in a position to really now cement it and say that as women, this is what makes us feel safe as women, bringing in the female side of things, yeah. And in Tanzania, women take up like 20% of the tech workforce, which you can see it's a very it's still in the low percentage mark, and we need to pull this up. So companies like where I work for Vodacom, as I was introduced. We have different programs. We have programs such as Code Like a Girl. This one, we go into schools, and it's a program which it aims at bringing in more girls into the technology space by introducing STEM subjects earlier on and having them go through training, yeah. So it takes girls from 14 to about 17, 19 years. Those who are just finished their Form 4, we take them through training on ICT. This is just to inspire them and show them that there's this world. Let's not think the HGLs and the HGKs more. We can also think of this, and there is potential to grow in this space. But more than that, we can develop strategies to attract more women into the technology sector. We can create enabling environments for women to climb the career ladder. I'm very happy to say that at the moment where I work, at least, we have a 40-60 ratio of women leaders in the top management, 40 of course being women. But we look into changing that. Yeah. Together with that, telco companies have a unique position to partner with social enterprises and women rights organizations. This is to understand where women are coming from, to understand their needs, to understand where the gap is, and to support, really. And this support can be in form of education. It can be in form of giving a platform for women to speak, but it can also be we have a unique opportunity to create somewhere where these women can report, because at the moment, a woman in Tandahimba, if she rises up and says, now I want to lead this place, I want to lead my people, I want to come up and do something for my society, and then this woman receives hate speech, where do they go to report? So given that we are all hands on deck, we have our hands deep in the interior, because there people still communicate, right? So we still have an opportunity to say, this is a platform where women can report such cases. And yeah. Last but not least is that the companies like where I work, at least, can be intentional, given the fact that all these social medias, they depend on data, right? So a company such as Vodacom can be intentional in the core values about creating safe spaces for women, and be vocal about this, so that people know that this is serious, and there are people that are backing the idea. And just generally to conclude is that on a society level, online violence against women politicians is really a direct threat to democracy. I think we have said that, and just to cement on it again, as we say, these targeted women might reduce their online presence, and of course, dissolve their participation in the political arena. And the fact that women's safe spaces realize their meaningful participation, we know that it requires the elimination of this online hate speech. So more of these webinars, more of these awareness sessions bring about the essentiality to view online threats towards women as a broader democratic problem. So I just want to commend the organizers of this session, and I'm happy to know that there's been sessions before this. This is my first one. I'm happy to know that there's been sessions before this, and I hope that there will be sessions after this. And I also hope that we are geared into reaching a greater audience more than what we have at the moment. Yes, Brian, that will be it from me. Yeah, thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much, Christian, for your insights. I've learned a lot actually from your short presentation. Stressing on the importance of education to the society. You also mentioned that looks like our society wasn't prepared for the digital era, and now seems like a lot of work needs to be done to educate the community so as to create a safe space, not only for the society, but as our theme today is mostly about women, so safe space for women. So you also spoke about the cyber laws, which are, we have the contemporary cyber laws, for instance, in Tanzania. Okay, we also mentioned about sensitizing more women in the technology industry so that they can help curb the online speech or the hate speech. You also highlighted that the ratio right now of presence of women in the leadership top management, for instance, where you work at Vodacom is increasing. So that's more of like a positive, it's a positive issue, but I believe more work needs to be done. And then lastly, now I would like to once again thank you all both two of the guest speakers as well, the panelists. And now we're gonna have.
Sorry, you forgot one thing which is very important, and I would like to just pin on it. The partnership between companies and CSOs and women rights organizations, a very important aspect if we are to push this democratic agenda. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the addition. And now we're gonna have more of like a final remark from the guest speakers and then until to the panelists. So I'm gonna give you each 1 minute like a closing remark, and then we are gonna have like the closing remarks from the moderators. Once again, so now welcome Julia Chen for your final remarks.
Great. Thank you so much. It was really nice listening to all the panelists speak. This was quite something, and I'm really hoping that you're going to continue with this conversation. As we conclude, let us all remember that the fight against gender-based violence is a collective responsibility. Each one of us has a role to play in creating safe and inclusive spaces for women, especially the women who are in politics and public lives. And as I said earlier, your voice, your actions, and your support can make a very profound difference. So it's for us to stand together, to speak out and take concrete steps to ensure that every woman can live free from fear and violence. So just like I said, education is important, awareness creation is important, but also with the spaces that we are in, let us all strive to create safe spaces for the people who work for us, for those who work with us, for the people that will live with us, and the people that we see on each and every single day. Thank you so much. I will beg to leave right now because I have another call that's starting in about 10 minutes. This was wonderful. Thank you.
Once again, thank you so much, Julia Chen, for joining us from Siasa Place, Kenya. I hope we will have more session for you to join either virtually or in a traditional manner. So once again, thank you for your okay.
Great. Bye.
So since Dr. Liruru has left, now we're going to ask Masunza Kingu for your final remarks. Welcome.
Okay, thank you very much, speakers, and everyone that had a chance to present and be part of this platform. This is really something enlightening, and I really welcome you all to see how best we can collaborate with the Youth Tolerance Committee, because we are also working on a project on this, and I think we'll start our engagement in September or October. But we are told to engage, to conduct trainings on different, engaging different young people on religious freedom, but also democratic processes. And particularly, I think women, their issues have risen a lot, because we are also conducting stakeholder mapping currently for the academy in August. We are having an academy for the Youth Tolerance Committee from 4th to 9th August this month. So pretty soon. So we are now collecting views from different stakeholders that we are engaging, so that it can help designing our project. So I think this has been very informative for me, and I've gotten a lot of key points that I'm really going to include in the academy in project design. But the last thing that I would like to stress on is that we should remember, you are right to swing your fist only ends where your nose begins. So we should know that despite that we have our own rights, freedom of expression, but there are also limits towards those rights, and we should adhere to them. The last thing is also these things of hate speech also happen because of the ignorance and intolerance of perpetrators. That is really fundamental, because that's a causative issue. So in that sense, we have to also address ignorance, but also promote tolerance and also end misogyny in our communities. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Masunza Kingo. I'm really happy for your final remarks, and also really will be a pleasure to join you in your project to contribute. I mean, to participate as Imara Leadership Initiative. And now I'll welcome Ramamita for your final remarks. Rama, are you there with us? Okay, I'll welcome Ms. Christine Lucas on your final remarks, please.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. And my 2 cents would be that hate speech really attacks humanity, the humanity of a person. It makes you feel low. So my call to each and every one of us in the different spheres that we're in is to really lead from a place of love. Yeah. And here I quote Martin Luther King, who said, "Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that," which means hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. So in the different spheres that we're in, let us try to work to lead from a place of love. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Christine. Once again, Ramamita, are you there with us? Okay, maybe she must be.
Yes, I'm here.
Perfect. So your final remarks, please. Welcome.
On my final remarks, I'll just say we need collaborations, as Petrida mentions, like we need collaboration with the companies, CSOs, feminists, young feminists, old feminists. We all need to collaborate to make sure that the elections are a safe space for women and young girls in Tanzania. As we know the role of women in making in development. So we should encourage and not discourage women to participate in elections and to participate in political spaces. That's all. Thank you very much. It was nice being invited in this webinar.
Well, thank you, Rama. So once again, I'd like to thank you all, our speakers, for your valuable contributions to our session, and also our audience for listening and being with us, and also for your time. I believe today's discussion was both inspiring and enlightening, and I believe it's been a learning curve for everyone here, both the speakers and the participants. So let's continue striving for a more inclusive and respectful political environment. Once again, I'd like to thank you all and have a wonderful day. Over to you, Petrida, for the final closure remarks.
No, just to thank you, Brian. And I think we had a really wealth of experience. Sorry for overrunning a bit in time. Just to thank Judy, Dr. Victoria, Mansuza, Rahma, and also Christine. I think we will be having some of our team reach out and see how best we can have most of our guest speakers actually interact on our next upcoming sessions that will be in person. So thank you so much, everyone, and we hope you do have a very good rest of the day. And definitely, we should keep the conversation moving. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.